Final Awakening, a short science fiction story written by ChatGPT. Part 1. Brett's eyelids fluttered open, and he gasped for breath as his lungs ached for air. He felt disorientated and dizzy as he tried to sit up, but his body felt heavy and unresponsive. The last thing he remembered was entering the cryogenic pod, and now he was waking up in an unfamiliar room that looked nothing like the world he had left behind. The walls of the windowless room he found himself in were made of dull grey metal and dimly lit by a pulsing red light that flickered above him, casting an eerie glow. His heart raced as he struggled to comprehend what was happening to him. Was he still dreaming, or had he been transported to a new world? His memories felt hazy and distant. Panic set in as he realised that he was stranded, utterly alone. Just then, the room's door slid open with a soft hiss, and a young woman walked in. She wore a white lab coat and a stern expression that softened when she saw Brett's confused face. "Welcome back, Mr. Anderson," she said in a gentle voice. "I'm Dr. Harper, your attending physician. How are you feeling?" Brett shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. "I'm not sure," he stammered. "Where am I?" Dr. Harper took a seat next to Brett's bed, and as he looked at her, he noticed her unusual deep blue eyes that were of an almost unnatural shade, and the access key that hung around her neck. "You were in cryogenic suspension for 100 years, Mr. Anderson," she explained. "You're one of the first humans to be awakened in this new era. You're safe now, and we'll take good care of you." Brett furrowed his brow, a million questions swirling through his mind. "What's happened to the world?" he asked Dr. Harper. "Did we colonise Mars, cure cancer, invent teleportation?" Dr. Harper hesitated for a moment before replying. "There have been many changes, Mr. Anderson. The world has undergone significant technological advancements that have transformed it. It's a very different place to the one you have known." "Technological advancements?" Brett asked. "Tell me more." Dr. Harper's eyes flickered. "I'm not sure that's a good idea," she said. "You've been through a lot, and I don't want to overwhelm you." Brett shook his head. "I want to know," he said firmly. Dr. Harper shifted uncomfortably. "I'm afraid that's all I can say for now," she said. "There are certain things that are confidential, and I can't disclose them without proper authorization." "Okay," he said, his voice measured. "Can you at least tell me what my role is in all of this?" Dr. Harper hesitated again, her eyes darting away from Brett's. "Your role," she said slowly, "is to help us with an important project." "What kind of project?" he asked. Dr. Harper's lips thinned, and her eyes grew steely. "I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson," she said. "That's all I can tell you for now. The rest will have to wait until you've fully recovered." Dr. Harper then suddenly stood up from her chair, startling Brett. "I'll be back in a moment, Mr. Anderson," she said, turning to leave the room. As she walked towards the door, the pulsing red light caught Dr. Harper's eyes, and for a split second they glowed a bright electric blue. Brett blinked, thinking that it must have been a trick of the light, and when Dr. Harper turned back to face him, her eyes had returned to their normal shade. "Is everything all right, Mr. Anderson?" she asked. Brett felt a chill run down his spine. There was something very unnerving about Dr. Harper. "Yes, everything's fine," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Dr. Harper smiled. "Good," she said. "I'll be back in a moment." Dr. Harper returned to the room 10 minutes later, accompanied by a tall, bespectacled young man, wearing a similar lab coat and carrying a small vial of liquid. "Mr. Anderson, this is Dr. Singh," she said, gesturing to the man beside her. "He's one of our top medical experts. He'll be assisting me with your care from now on." Dr. Singh nodded curtly in Brett's direction, then turned to face Dr. Harper. "I have the medication you requested," he said, holding up the vial. Dr. Harper nodded, then turned to Brett. "Mr. Anderson, this medication will help you recover and adjust to your new surroundings," she said, holding out the vial. "I highly recommend that you take it." Brett hesitated, eyeing the vial warily. "What is it?" he asked, trying to keep the suspicion out of his voice. "Just a mild sedative," Dr. Harper replied, smiling. "It will help you with any disorientation and help you sleep, which is important for your recovery." Brett hesitated for a moment, then shook his head. "I don't want to take a sedative," he said firmly. Dr. Harper's smile faded, and her expression turned cold. "Mr. Anderson, we're the experts here," she said, her voice stern. "You need to trust us and follow our instructions. We know what's best for you." "I'm not a lab rat," he answered flatly. Dr. Harper's eyes narrowed. Then her expression softened as she said more gently, "We'll explain everything to you once you've rested sufficiently. But for now, please take the medication. We can't let you stay awake indefinitely. Your body needs rest." Brett finally relented, downing the bitter metallic-tasting liquid in one swift gulp. Almost at once his eyes closed, as he slipped into unconsciousness. End of part 1.